I started thinking about it, and a lot of people, there's a lot of game theory around what people want to do when PulseChain obviously goes live. Many people are obviously in HEX right now. If you're sleeping under a rock, the main thing that we would do is say to buy, would buy HEX to make sure that we get the copy prior to PulseChain launch. Sometimes people ask the question, should I just have dry powder on the side to try to accumulate PulseX and or PulseChain, the token? And really the best thing to do, not financial advice to you, but what I am doing, what Ewok is doing, is buying HEX, because right now, even, especially, now that we're down to the 8s again, because you will get that free copy you get the copy of HEX on PulseChain. And if you want to, so number one right there, you've already got, a 100% return on your HEX in terms of HEX anyway. And then at that point, you could use that as your dry powder to transition over into Pulse, transition into PulseX, whatever it is you would like to do. And don't forget, Ewok has brought this up many times. If you happen to hold other tokens as well that are ERC20 tokens on Ethereum, you're going to get that copy as well. We don't know if at all, they will hold any value once they get to Pulse, or for how long. But remember, you're going to get them too, and could possibly use them to trade into anything that you may not have yet that you want to acquire. So with all of that said, Ewok, obviously, Richard Hart created HEX. It's been like, the greatest crypto invention and smart contract protocol yet. What is as a longtime OG Hexican, what is your view of how much do you really want? And you can break this down into both versions of HEX if you want, because I'm interested in that too. But how much of your portfolio do you really want to be HEX versus how much you're holding in Pulse or PulseX or anything else in this ecosystem? We can even go out as far as Hedron, but kind of just talking more like the major tokens that are actually Richard Hart tokens. How are you looking to break it down? And, full disclosure, you sacrifice for Pulse and PulseX. So what do you think? What makes sense for you with this portfolio?
When you brought that up earlier this morning and you said, I do want to talk about allocations and things like that, I started thinking about it. And it's funny because as the bull market happens, your allocation percentages could change. For example, I know during the last market, a lot of people had maybe 5-10% of their portfolio allocated to HEX, and it literally turned into 85%
Right.
of their value. So it's really hard to say at this time. I do know I'm not going to dump HEX for anything else. I was fortunate enough to sacrifice some pretty solid amounts for each Pulse and PulseX. So I'm hoping I'll be okay there. As far as value goes, I'll probably still at launch, I'll probably still be 80% allocated in HEX, just because of the value of it. Now, if I took the amount that I sacrificed for Pulse or PulseX, it's way more than I put in to HEX at the beginning. So it's you know what I mean? It's a very hard thing to really compare. And I don't know how you even put a percentage on it when the prices change so much. Then you're going to get the copy. So you got to figure that in. And then, the only thing that I can really say percentage wise is I probably put 50 times, maybe more, in to the sacrifices than I did in the adoption amplifier and through the early days of HEX. So,
right.
As time goes on, we'll kind of see how that all evens out percentage wise. But I think, like I said, for me, it's going to be a lot different for people that didn't sacrifice for either one. And they are right now the only opportunity they have to get in. Well, not the only one, but I think the strongest one is the HEX opportunity of buying the HEX and then kind of evening it out. So for me, it's a little different than what it would be for somebody new that's just trying to get into it that way. So I don't have a good answer, unfortunately, percentage wise, but um, if I were new, I would probably try and break them up as evenly as possible. Keep in mind, Hex is still going to pay that yield, so that is super important. And PulseChain, deflationary, PulseX, buy and burn. So those are going to go down while Hex is still generating more of that yield asset. So just something to think about.
Yeah, and that's kind of the answer that I thought you would give. Is like obviously, to each his own. Number one, but yeah, you are going to be, you're in the way. You're kind of the minority. Like, not many people would have been Hex OGs and be so overloaded in Hex right now because of that crazy price appreciation, and had the opportunity to sacrifice for both Pulse and PulseX. Because let's remember, I mean, we're nearing a year. From PulseChain sacrifice window here. So, or excuse me, no.
2 years
Yeah,
from Pulse
two actually, yeah, and
in
over
June.
a year already since PulseX. Man,
Yeah.
time flies, I
Yep.
guess. But yeah, so remember that as well. But yeah, I'm with you, and maybe leads me to this question: is like, you don't have to do this, obviously, but of these assets, I mean, like Hex, you kind of just said it. I mean, Hex has that yield. Hex is really like the engine to this whole thing. Like, Hex was the initial Richard Hart creation. That's the thing that is most important to me to own on both blockchains, and the actual layer one of PulseChain and the DEX of PulseX are other assets I would want to have as well. So I guess, like, as the prices establish themselves for all of these tokens a few months in, maybe then you can start looking a little bit more towards a specific allocation. But to me, much like the thumbnail, if you're watching us live tonight, like, Hex is the one I would want to be overweight in, and it likely is going to be the one that you will be overweight in for some time, because that's what you've already got right now. You're going to get the copy, obviously. Will we, won't we? How soon will we see parity in price on those two chains? And then, how much do you want to get involved in Pulse or PulseX? That's a question I want to ask you right now. So put yourself in the shoes of somebody who did not sacrifice, let's say, for either one. We've talked about this before. The most common sacker, if you will, is somebody who sacrificed for PulseX, not for PulseChain, because it came about 6 months later down the road. And there's just way more people to sacrifice for PulseX. But put yourself in the shoes of somebody who did not sacrifice at all. What would you be? We won't talk in dollar terms, but in Hex terms anyway. And I agree with you. I wouldn't want to depart with my Hex. Like, even now, when I think of it, and we propose, like we're saying right now, buy Hex to have that copy, and then if you would like to trade that, go ahead. But then I'm going to feel like, well, I don't really want to trade my Hex.
Right.
It's like you want to take new money at that time and do it. But what would you, of the Hex that you'd have at the time, I guess, what percentages or how much of a percentage would you want to get out of and buy some Pulse and PulseX once the dust has settled a little bit, the first couple of days, and the ratio trading has died down? What percentage would you think comfortable of ditching out on Hex to acquire these two tokens?
I think I would probably stay 60, 20, 20. 60% Hex, 20% Pulse, 20% PulseX. That's about as evenly rounded as I could probably guess. And maybe even go 80, 10, 10, and then pull that other 10 and 10 in later to equal out some, to get some dry powder in after the bridge is active. When you can bridge in some money, hopefully then by then, like you said, the dust may have settled by then, and you can get a decent price floor. We've talked about this before. Usually anywhere between 15 to 40 days, most new charts will find a bottom or a floor at that point. Once the dust settles anyway, you might be able to get a pretty good deal. So you may want to go 80, 10, and 10 and then put your other 10% of each in when you get that opportunity. So, I wouldn't recommend doing it all at the very beginning, because I do see somewhat of a pullback. Just like every other crypto that launches, that it's probably going to happen. No financial advice. It goes straight up. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry for your luck, but um, I think that is probably a strategy that I would do, is, get 10% of each at the beginning, um, and then try to dollar cost average your way in. It's still always been one of the best ways to get into anything, um, is to DCA as you get more dry powder. And by then, like I said, the bridge will be working. You'll be able to, get into USD or ETH or whatever it may be, bridge it over, and use that value, and purchase more.
HEXPassiveIncome.com. My friend Crypto Coffee has created what I think is probably the best course for a new cryptocurrency investor. Not only that, but these courses usually charge an arm and a leg. Crypto Coffee is only charging $200. I think right now he actually has a discount for $150. I have a link below in the description. If you are new to crypto, do not understand HEX and how it works, click the link below. It's a quick, easy course. He only gives you the basics. I personally, myself, have thought about creating an intro to crypto course in the past. I don't think there's any reason to do so, because Matt, Crypto Coffee, has already taken care of that. And I don't think anything needs to be added by anybody else. So check it out. The link is in the description, and sign up to HEX Passive Income today.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And we got a comment from I missed it now.
Thomas.
Yeah, I want to get to that, but I was just seeing another comment where somebody said that's the exact shoes that they're in. They didn't sacrifice for either one, so it's good for them to hear. And I think that is good, because we're so far beyond it now. I mean, we are over a year beyond the last sacrifice. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that don't. If you have a sacrifice for either one of them, you feel good knowing that, like, I'm already in on the ground floor. I at least have my foot in the door a little bit. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I am traditionally with you, just kind of finishing off on that point about the portfolio. I mean, yeah, I think being overweight in HEX is always going to be the move. Like, that is the asset. Like, don't forget, excited as everybody is for PulseChain, that is an invention from Richard because of expensive fees on Ethereum, and it's good. It's good innovation. HEX is a huge ecosystem and definitely the, most rabid community in crypto. But HEX to me is the main asset to have. So yeah, I kind of agree with your 60-20-20 thing, maybe even as aggressive as 80-10-10. And, remember too, I mean, like the EHEX, your dollar cost averaging, basis, like where you actually bought at, is going to be a higher number than the value, I should say, of HEX is going to be much higher than what the value is on Pulse or PulseX whenever you initially buy those. So remember that too, and remember the room to run that those two may have in relation to HEX. You could kind of shave some off the top here and there, although I wouldn't get too aggressive with that. I mean, it's really all up to you, but I am with you. I won't always want to be overweight in HEX. So
yeah.
So
I know there will be stable coins eventually. Liquid Loans guys will have a stable coin. There's another group that's talking about one as well. I don't know how long. It probably won't be upon launch, but there will be some stable coins on PulseChain. So just hang tight for those. They won't happen immediately, but they will be there.